Welcome to the Criminal Court Chronicles, where the courtroom meets the chilling unknown. Each episode, we uncover spine-tingling cases and shocking truths that will leave you on the edge of your seat. Justice has never been this haunting. Let's begin.
Okay, so get ready, because this one is going to be pretty unsettling, but also really fascinating. We're diving into the story of Ed Gein, a man whose crimes really shocked the world, and his legacy continues to haunt us through some of the most iconic horror films out there. So it really makes you wonder, how could someone seemingly so ordinary commit such horrific acts?
Yeah, it's a question that has puzzled people for decades. I mean, on the surface, Ed Gein was just a simple farmer from Plainfield, Wisconsin.
Yeah.
But beneath that facade was a dark and twisted psyche shaped by a really troubled past.
So let's start there with his childhood. What was it about his early life that might have set him on this path?
Well, his family life was anything but stable. His father was an alcoholic and abusive, and his mother, Augusta, was a domineering religious fanatic who instilled a deep fear of the world, and particularly of women and Ed.
That sounds like an incredibly oppressive environment to grow up in.
Absolutely. I mean, Ed was constantly bombarded with his mother's fire and brimstone sermons about sin and depravity.
Yeah.
Created this really warped worldview that would have a lasting impact on him.
And then there's the death of his older brother, Henry. Wasn't he the only member of the family who really challenged their mother?
Yes, he was. And his death, while officially ruled an accident, was shrouded in mystery. Ed was actually the last person to see him alive, which has fueled speculation about his possible involvement for years. But whether or not Ed had a hand in Henry's death, the loss undoubtedly had a profound impact on him.
It seems like there are already so many red flags here, even before we get to the actual crimes.
Exactly. These early traumas combined with the dysfunctional family dynamics really created a breeding ground for psychological instability. For example, the unhealthy attachment Ed developed towards his mother is something that becomes tragically clear later on.
You mentioned that his mother was particularly afraid of women. How did that manifest itself in her relationship with Ed?
Well, Augusta Gein believed that all women, except for herself, were instruments of the devil, intent on corrupting men. And she isolated Ed from the outside world, teaching him to fear and distrust women.
So he never had a chance to develop healthy relationships with women.
Precisely. And that isolation, coupled with his mother's constant negative reinforcement, had a devastating impact on his psychosexual development.
So the stage is set for a really disturbing story, and I guess things really take a dark turn with his mother's death in 1945, right? I mean, she was his whole world.
That's right. Her death was a devastating blow to Ed, leaving him utterly alone and emotionally adrift. And it's at this point that his unhealthy attachment to his mother morphs into something far more sinister.
How so?
Well after Augusta's death, Ed sealed off her room, preserving it as a shrine. The rest of the house was allowed to decay, but her room remained untouched, a testament to his morbid fixation.
It's almost like he was trying to keep her alive, to hold on to her presence in some way.
That's one interpretation, but it also speaks to a deeper psychological disturbance. Ed wasn't simply mourning his mother, he was clinging to her memory in a way that blurred the lines between reality and fantasy. It's as if he was trying to merge with her to become her in some twisted way.
And this is where the story starts to veer into the truly horrific, isn't it? Because it wasn't long before people in Plainfield started to disappear.
You're right. The first to vanish was Mary Hogan, a tavern owner who bore a striking resemblance to Augusta Gein. Then Babrice Warden, a hardware store owner, also disappeared.
And Ed was the last person to see her, which led the police right to his doorstep. I can only imagine what they must have felt when they entered that house.
What they found was a scene straight out of a nightmare. Bernice Warden's mutilated body was just the beginning. The house was filled with furniture made from human bones and skin. Masks crafted from the faces of his victims.
It's almost impossible to comprehend the level of depravity that would lead someone to do such things.
And yet, as horrific as these discoveries were, perhaps the most disturbing item was a complete skin suit that Ed had painstakingly stitched together. This wasn't just about collecting morbid trophies. This pointed to something much darker, a desire to literally inhabit the skin of his victims, to transcend the boundaries of his own identity.
Okay, that is seriously disturbing. It's hard to even imagine what would drive someone to do something like that, to wear another person's skin. But I guess that's what makes this case so fascinating and so terrifying. It forces us to confront the darkest corners of the human psyche.
Precisely, and is this psychological complexity. That makes Ed Gein's case so significant, not just in the annals of true crime, but in the evolution of the horror genre itself.
Okay, I'm intrigued. How did a case like this actually impact horror movies? I mean, wasn't horror already pretty scary back then?
Well, it was, but in a different way. Before Ed Gein, horror was largely dominated by the supernatural. Vampires, werewolves, creatures lurking in the shadows. These monsters were clearly other. Things that went bump in the night, but not things you'd encounter in broad daylight.
So how did Gein change that?
His case brought horror home. Literally. He transformed his farmhouse into a tableau of the macabre. It was no longer a Gothic castle or a haunted forest that served as the backdrop for horror, but a seemingly normal, everyday setting.
That's a good point. It's much more unsettling to think that the horrors we see on screen could actually happen in our own backyards.
Exactly. And that's precisely the shift that Ed Gein's case ushered in. He became the prototype for the monster next door, the seemingly ordinary person who harbors dark secrets and a capacity for unspeakable evil.
I can see how that would be a much more terrifying concept for audiences to grapple with.
Absolutely, and the film industry quickly picked up on this. Ed Gein's case became a direct source of inspiration for some of the most iconic horror movies ever made. His story was so disturbing, so deeply unsettling, that it really resonated with filmmakers looking to tap into a new kind of fear.
So what are some specific examples of films that were influenced by Ed Gein?
Well, one of the most obvious examples is Alfred Hitchcock's Psycho. The character of Norman Bates, the motel owner with the creepy taxidermy hobby and the unhealthy attachment to his mother, was heavily inspired by Ed Gein. Even Bates's infamous habit of dressing up in his mother's clothes directly mirrors Gein's desire to literally become his mother.
Wow, I never realized that connection was so direct.
Oh, it is. And then there's The Silence of the Lambs, a film that really dives into the psychology of serial killers. Remember Buffalo Bill, the antagonist, who skins his victims to make a woman's suit?
Yeah, that's one of the most disturbing movie villains of all time. It's all starting to make sense now.
It's all there. The obsession with creating a suit from human skin, the blurring of gender identity, the fascination with becoming something other than oneself. These are all themes that directly connect back to Ed Gein's case.
And the Texas Chainsaw Massacre fits into this too, right? With Leatherface wearing masks made of human skin.
Exactly. Though Leatherface and his family are more overtly sadistic than Gein, the aesthetic they embrace, the use of human remains as decor in the rural setting, all speak to the lasting influence of the Gein case.
So Ed Gein really did change the landscape of horror. It's amazing how one real-life case managed to have such a profound impact on an entire genre.
It's a testament to the power of the story. Gein's crimes tapped into something primal, a fear of the darkness that can reside within seemingly ordinary people. It's a fear that continues to fascinate and horrify us to this day.
Speaking of Gein himself, what ultimately became of him after all those horrific discoveries? How did the story end? Well, after those horrifying discoveries at his farm, I can't imagine he just walked away.
No, he didn't. Gein was declared legally insane, and he spent the rest of his days in a mental institution. He died in 1984 at the age of 77.
So he never really faced justice for what he did.
That's true, and it brings up a lot of complex questions about mental illness and criminal responsibility. Was he truly insane? Or was there some level of awareness to his actions that made him culpable? It's a debate that's been going on for decades.
Yeah, it makes you think about that fine line between sanity and madness, and how sometimes the scariest monsters are the ones who seem the most ordinary on the surface.
Exactly, and that's perhaps the most enduring legacy of Ed Gein. He shattered that illusion that evil is something easily identifiable, something monstrous in appearance. He forced us to confront the reality that it can lurk beneath the surface of anyone, even the quiet farmer down the road.
We've taken a deep dive into the disturbing world of Ed Gein, a man whose crimes transcended the realm of true crime and seeped into our cultural consciousness, shaping the way we view horror. We explored the psychological factors that may have contributed to his actions, from his impressive upbringing to his really unhealthy attachment to his mother, and we saw how his case became a catalyst for a new era of horror in film, inspiring iconic villains and shifting the focus from supernatural monsters to the terrifying potential for evil that exists within seemingly ordinary people.
What's fascinating is that despite the gruesome details of his crimes, what continues to grip our imaginations is the psychology behind them. This desire to become someone else, to erase the boundaries between self and other. It's a theme that resonates deeply, even if it's expressed in a much less horrific way in our own lives.
It makes you wonder, doesn't it? What is it about these monsters next door that makes them so much more frightening than creatures like vampires or werewolves?
I think it's the element of plausibility.
Yeah.
With supernatural monsters, there's a sense of distance, a safety net of disbelief. But with someone like Ed Gein, the horror hits closer to home. It could be your neighbor, your coworker, someone you see at the grocery store. It makes us question our own judgment, our ability to discern good from evil in the people we encounter every day.
It's a chilling thought. But perhaps that's the ultimate power of the Ed Gein story. To remind us that evil doesn't always wear a mask or have fangs. Sometimes it wears a friendly face and lives right next door.
And in grappling with that unsettling truth, perhaps we gain a deeper understanding of ourselves and the complexities of the human condition.
So we end this deep dive with a question for you to ponder. What is it about the idea of the monster next door that resonates so deeply with us? Is it the fear of the unknown, the realization that evil can lurk anywhere? Or perhaps something even deeper, something that speaks to our own hidden desires and anxieties? Until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and maybe keep a light on in the hallway.
Thanks for tuning in to the Criminal Court Chronicles. Stay curious, stay vigilant, and remember, justice never sleeps. Don't forget to subscribe and join us next time for more cases that will keep you questioning everything. Until then, stay safe out there.